everyone. I'm Dora.
I'm Jen, and welcome back to Two Yogis Talking About Life.
So today we have a special guest with us. We have Denie Shae Martinez, and we are so happy to have her join us in our conversations. And I wanted to just introduce to you or let you know a little bit about Denie Shae. So Denie Shae is a compassionate advocate for holistic health, dedicated to nurturing the connection between body and mind. Since transitioning from creating balanced external spaces in 2012, she has focused on cultivating inner harmony as the creator of Giving Tree Essentials. With certifications in Ayurveda, iRest, Yoga Nidra, yoga, massage therapy, and aromatic botanical medicine, along with a deep respect and curiosity for somatics and polyvagal theory, she empowers others to reclaim their sense of self, dignity, and well-being through sharing resources and support that build resiliency and enhance one's quality of life. You'll find Denie Shae most often walking in nature, in the kitchen cooking, cuddled up with her pups on the sofa, reading or watching a comedy with her wonderful husband. Welcome, Denie Shae. We are so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. So I would love for you to maybe share what was the inspiration that brought you to iRest.
Yeah, I think like some people, maybe not all people, I was suffering. So I found it as a way to alleviate some massive anxiety and just a lot of dysregulation in my nervous system. So I'm a type A personality by nature, so I can be a bit high strung, and I had a massive panic attack in 2012 that made me feel just completely outside of myself and outside of my life. And so when I was Googling, of course, natural ways to help with anxiety, what came up most that was most attractive to me was aromatherapy, meditation, and yoga. So that's kind of where I started. I didn't know what I was getting into, honestly, with iRest. I got into yoga and asked a lot of questions after class. And my teacher at the local studio that I was practicing at encouraged me to do a 200-hour training, which I did, and it was great. I learned a lot, but I was still seeking. There was still more I felt like I was looking for. So I saw that there was an iRest level 1 training nearby and thought it was a restorative program, which it is, but it was different than what I thought it was going to be. So it was definitely a big healing and transformative process for myself in the level 1 training. And then I was hooked and did level 2 and retreats and the certification program.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you know, in talking with you and knowing you, perhaps related to how iRest might have influenced what's unfolding and what the advocacy work, perhaps that you might be called to do related to the endometriosis. Just like we were talking, Dora and I, how iRest really relates to my advocacy through education and my autoimmune condition, alopecia, and Dora working with people with anxiety and chronic stress. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that, how iRest relates to your advocacy in endometriosis.
Yeah. It's so I have endometriosis, and I've had it for my lifetime, I would say. The symptoms started coming around when I was about 14 or 15, and I really didn't have any type of resources or support for that. So there was a long period of time that I would say um, I was doing the best I could with what I had. But really, over the last 5 years, when my endometriosis started getting more and more severe and more debilitating, that's when iRest really came in and became such a lifeline. Um, I had a tremendous amount of unease, and I would say a really challenging time receiving care in the medical model. And I I believe that I did experience some medical trauma, although, I wasn't sure what that looked like. But I can tell you now when I go into a new doctor's office and experience my body going through these processes, I'm very aware that I've experienced that. And so it was really challenging. And for a while, it took me by surprise. I thought I was pretty well resourced. Um, but in taking quite some time to find care, I think what was the most helpful that iRest had instilled in me prior to that was staying curious and connected to my experience. It could be really easy sort of to check out and give up. But I knew and I could feel deep within myself that there was something going on and that I wasn't going to stop until I found someone to help me. And I did, and that was wonderful. But that curiosity component and staying connected was really important. I would also say that one of the key things for me was to realize that I wasn't going through this alone, that there's a lot of people. The numbers are like 1 in 10 people assigned female at birth are experiencing endometriosis, and that's just what we have documented. So there may be more than that out there, but that it's really misunderstood and mismanaged. So feeling lost and under-resourced, I was in plenty of company for that. So just not feeling alone and realizing there was a big community of people that really needed help that just they weren't getting it. So with some of those tools that iRest has given me, I was able to stay present, connected, and curious, even when the physical pain was really intense and the emotions, really started to become large waves. I was able to stay grounded enough in my body and my inner resource, which was huge.
So, Denie Shae, thank you for sharing your experience with endometriosis and to bring this to light and for people to actually understand that this actually happens to quite a lot of people and that it is definitely frustrating when the medical system isn't really supporting us in a way that is nurturing. Um, and so, you know, for those of us who may not be so familiar with the iRest practice, and you talked about, it helping you to really stay with your experience and finding your inner resource. I'm just curious to know, you know, how maybe the iRest practice has been part of your journey, maybe in your everyday life, or even in the lives of your loved ones who may be also experiencing this journey with you.
Yeah. I do want to start off by saying I think the number one thing that happened way back in day one of level one training, which is important and I think will always be important to me, is recognizing there's something in me that is whole with, despite whatever's going on. I didn't really have that prior to iRest. I always felt like everything was happening outside of me and that I wasn't really enough and didn't ever feel established and having a healthy sense of self. So during my during early on, even before iRest, when I'd have those moments after an asana practice and shavasana where I would have that physical, real felt sense experience of kind of emptying out and dissolving into something great and just having that sense of deep rest and okayness. I mean, that's what I loved, and that's what felt so good. And then that first day in level one training, and when Richard gave his first iRest practice, and I sat up and it's like, oh, that's the thing. That's the thing that's been happening in asana that has been so life-changing, that has kept me coming back and being really curious. So experiencing really early on that sense of wholeness was wonderful. And I'm happy that it was a felt sense first experience. And then we started talking about inner resource because I didn't really understand that concept too well. And I definitely didn't feel like I had one that I could call upon early on in my practice. So the level 1 training really helped me establish an inner resource. So yeah, first and foremost, that sense of wholeness, starting from wholeness, inner resourcing, I would say is like one of those themes that um, I hadn't found anywhere else. And without it, I don't think I would be where I am today. But I also learned that over time, that my inner resources for me, a lot of times were definitely like portals. I did have to rely heavily on, imagery or memories or my really full imagination, which was great. Um, yeah, so I think the staying in that wholeness and inner resourcing is like my number one. Um, Curiosity, I think, is woven through the iRest practice, right? We're this witnessing presence, then we, keep moving into more of an awareness state. But for me, having a panic attack so early on and feeling so outside of myself, the the parts of the practice that have always been super helpful for me is the ones that help me have a healthy identification with my body, mind, and senses. So for me, being curious and being in and staying in and, being okay and feeling some of the things that might be really uncomfortable that I might have a preference not to feel. Um, but like resisting all those things would just keep it there and they would persist. And then, they would start to get more inflated and more challenging to meet. So that curiosity component has helped me greatly in self-advocacy with the endometriosis and getting diagnosed. Because there were times where I would definitely feel frozen and upset at doctors and how I was treated. And again, instead of just like washing my hands of everything, it was really like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me keep researching. Let me be curious. Let me, read research studies and, go on Reddit boards and see what other people were experiencing. So that sense of curiosity really kept me open. And I think in a lot of ways that supported not just my mind and my heart, but also my body. So I didn't have as much tension and restriction. When I'm curious, there is this feeling that I get that is just like all my pores are opening up, wanting to absorb more of what's happening. So um, that's been great. And being curious for me, like I mentioned with my type A nature, has definitely turned down the volume on my critical, sharp way of being sometimes, which I definitely can be. And that's been helpful, right? Like not just with me getting my diagnosis and getting, fairly decent treatment. It's helped me communicate with loved ones and my friends and my work environment and community about what I'm experiencing. And I think the more I'm curious and sharing, the more that other people reflect that and they become curious and they're asking questions. And I just also think being curious is such a friendly way to be in the world. And iRest definitely offered me that, right? Like turning down that sharp, critical eye that I used to have, that I still can have, and just really learning how to befriend myself. And then that happens with other people. So it does help me communicate a lot of what I'm feeling in a way that is, I think, definitely more kind. And then I would say one of the last things, I mean, there's so many, but like if I had to pick one more thing, um, that my mom would always say to me that I did not understand as a teenager. But, for her, she would tell me, this too shall pass. But for me, what I like is like no feelings final, which I love. So, recognizing that everything is changing, everything is going through these phases, right? I'm sure you've talked about it here, the birth, the growth, the stabilization, the decaying, and the eventual demise. That's really helpful when dealing with physical pain or chronic pain or these emotions that just don't seem to quit when you're not getting the help that you need, just telling myself like no feeling is final, this will eventually start to loosen up a little bit, even if it's just a little bit, it's not going to stay the same way. So that was very, very helpful, as well as I've been going through my process. And I feel like that's helpful when I'm with loved ones and they're going through their difficult stuff. And I'm like, oh, the grief or the pain or the anxiety or the overwhelm, and realizing like this is moving through them, moving, right? It's moving through them. So, that does definitely take the pressure off of like having to do anything, right? Other than just being curious and befriending their experience and just, sitting alongside them.
Yeah, I think you've brought in some, beautiful points about the inner resource and that feeling of wholeness and curiosity. So I think it leads in perfectly to perhaps maybe some tips that people can bring in, especially around, maybe chronic illnesses or specifically endometriosis. What would be your recommendations perhaps for people?
Oh, I would just like, if it was consensual, give everybody a hug first and foremost. I would say like for them personally, like this is a really isolating experience for a lot of people. I'm speaking to myself saying that, like when I first started looking around, I didn't know anybody that also had endometriosis. And, 5 years later, come to find out two girls that I went to high school with reached out recently and was like, oh, I'm pretty positive I have endometriosis too. And I know a lot more people that have endometriosis now because I sought out a community of support. So knowing that, this might be very isolating and confusing, I would say, having a community of support, whether that's a Reddit social media board for endometriosis or, someone that or maybe there's a support group that your doctor might know about if you have a great doctor. Um, the co-regulation aspect is huge. I truly don't think anyone can thrive experiencing endometriosis alone. Whether you have a supportive family or, like I said, there's like a friend that you have, even if they don't have endometriosis, like I have a couple of really close friends that I met in the iRest community that also have some chronic conditions. So even though they don't have the same condition I have, they're dealing with these chronic things as well. And so we could be with each other in that. And so just not feeling alone in that was huge. So find a community, find a friend. Of course, animals are great, but at some point you're going to want another co-regulative person. So finding that however you can. And like a tip for that is there's a lot of people online offering things. I think that's one of the, you could say we have something good coming out of our pandemic experience. It's that a lot of things have moved online or people that are offering things online. So looking for communities that are working with nervous systems and regulating nervous systems, whether that's meditation groups or yoga groups or book clubs, like find a group of people or find at least someone, maybe it's a practitioner that you're seeing that can help you along to take away some of that feeling of isolation. And, I would say iRest practitioners are great because, we often will start with wholeness, with establishing an inner resource for you. And, if a felt sense of safety, security, ease, peace, for me, it's stillness, if that seems like really far away, one of my favorite things that I do when I work with people is starting to foster an outer resource. So it might not be happening in meditation for you just yet, but start to notice in your day when you feel connected to yourself. Notice during your day when you're smiling or laughing or playing or feeling loved or feeling loving. Like those are really great pointers. And so for me, walking outside, being with my dogs, watching a comedy, sitting with friends. I can think of people I know that for them it's dancing or singing or painting. So, helping them develop, if it has to be an outer resource at first, and then over time, really deepening into that inner resource, something you can kind of rest back into when you're in meditation, but also when you're doing the dishes or in the bath. I would pair all my stuff together. Being an Ayurvedic practitioner, for me, I knew like my body loved Abhyanga, loved that warm oil, and I'd pair my essential oils in, and it'd be all the oils that I love, all the grounding oils, the base oils that help my nervous system. So I'm doing this oil massage, and then I'm getting in a salty bath, and I have some music on that I love, or I'm doing an iRest in the tub, and I just would layer all of these practices on. So you can do that too. You just have to find, your things that work for you. Some other tips I would say is like, it's okay to take a break, right? Like we're here, we're iRest practitioners, but one of the things that I've heard our senior teachers say over and over again is like, if you're in a practice and it's just not working, like get up, go do something else. So you don't need to muscle through it. If it feels like you're muscling through it, like that's your indicator for like time out, like take a break, go do some of those other outer resources, get your hands in the earth garden, or watch puppy videos online, do something that, makes you smile, that can be outside of an iRest practice. I'd also say, coming from like an athletic background and being much more like kinesthetic and having a, massage therapy certificate, I always like to tell people, you're not a walking head. It's okay to feel things, and it's going to be maybe uncomfortable right initially, especially if we live in a body that is experiencing chronic pain. The last thing we want to do is feel more stuff typically, or we've learned to kind of quiet down everything from here. And, that's okay, right? Initially, that's one way to live in the world. But at some point, you can't escape that. You're going to have to start feeling things. And if we start to dampen, like, I don't want to feel this chronic pain, we're also dampening our capacity to feel joy and love and pleasure. And like, we want to feel those things. So, take it at your own pace. If you're doing this for yourself, or if you're a practitioner supporting other people, like let them be in the driver's seat, the people that you're supporting. You don't want to flood them or make them feel any sort of shame because they're not feeling deeply enough yet. Like they'll get there in their own time. So, for iRest practitioners, I would say this is where like continuums might be a really great thing to do with people early on, if they're talking about emotions or certain sensations or thoughts, because we can start our walking heads can start like on an easy end of the spectrum and start to work their way up into, greater degrees of discomfort and comfort.
I love all of that. I'm glad this is recorded so that we can write this all down for ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's so lovely to, have you on this side of it, actually, because usually you and I are seated together, doing the production stuff along with Dora assisting. So it's so nice to have all these beautiful things interwoven that you also offer. So this is a great time, perhaps, if you can share where people can find you to learn from you or work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can find me online at givingtreeessentials.com, and I have like some social things there. I know I'm on Instagram, although I'll be honest, I look around and, I go through these phases where I post a lot, and sometimes I'm really quiet. I've been quiet a bit lately. I just had a second surgery for myself. I'm about 6 weeks out of recovery. So I'll be getting back to being a bit more active in my posting on Instagram, but I also have a YouTube where I have some recordings. Again, I'd like to get some more updated recordings on there. So, but you can find all of that from Giving Tree Essentials. I'm just starting off my advocacy journey, and it's definitely skewed a bit toward endometriosis patients. but also from my experience, I've learned that there's a lot of people experiencing co-conditions with endometriosis or other chronic conditions. So um, I feel like that'll be a population that I'm really open to serving from my unique experience and what I can understand from my endometriosis journey. It is challenging and it's not something we should be doing alone. So I hope to, help those people along and foster a sense of safety in their body and offer tools and resources for them. I'm also doing it was like a big advocacy thing for myself that I'm really excited about. A little bit nervous, but that's why I have to do it because it feels like on the edge of something important. On November 19th, I'm not sure when this will be published, but November 19th of 2024, I'm going to be a panelist on the AAGL Global Congress Patient-Centered Panel. And the AAGL Global Conference or Congress is a premier scientific conference for gynecological surgeons from around the world. So that's really big and exciting. So I'll be doing that. I am getting back to teaching my two weekly classes online. I do a Monday meditation, which is essentially iRest. And I usually do like a 5 or 10 minute, some kind of touching to settle in, whether it's tapping or brushing or, vagus nerve stuff. And then on Thursday, I offer a move, massage, and meditate practice. That's all open to the public. I'm hoping springtime next year, I'll be offering a loving touch self acupressure series online. I'm however I can get people touching themselves and getting in their body, I'm game for. So I'll be doing that. And I'm also open to seeing people one-on-one, doing a variety of things like custom aromatherapy and personalized meditations and dyads and health and lifestyle support.
That's so
Thank you
wonderful.
so much. Yeah, you're doing so many amazing or you have so many amazing offerings, and we'll make sure that we'll post all of that in our description so that people can find you and be connected to you. And I know that you have some great YouTube videos that are very educational, so I think that could be really helpful for a lot of our listeners as well. So I want to just say a big thank you, Denie Shae, for sharing your time with us. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was great. I'm excited to hear the other guests that you have on.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
See you
you.
next time. Thank you so much.
Bye.